Our guest tonight is Brian Sabin. His hometown is Avon Lake, as some of you know. He's an OU graduate. He commuted from down the street by Dave Rookie. He's never been to a Kiwanis meeting, so please give him a nice round of applause.
Thank you all very much. I'm truly honored to be here with you this evening. As Russ mentioned, my name is Brian Sabin. I'm here to speak with you this evening about our effort to renew Alps, or the Avon Lake Play Space, which is also known as the big park behind, or excuse me, the big playground across from the pool at Blesser Park. This evening I'm going to talk to you about that effort a bit and all of the reasons why I feel it's a worthy improvement that our community needs. But before I get into that, I wanted to start by simply saying thank you. I'll be honest with you that I didn't exactly know what I was setting out to, what I was getting myself into when I first got into this effort with Alps. Basically, just Russ mentioned a little bit about me in the intro. As a little more info, I live here. I have two daughters. Their ages like 6 and 3. And I was simply up at a concert, one of our concerts in the park at Blesser Park, across from Alps, and I was with a friend named Emery Copen, who's also been helping on this effort, and we were just talking about how Alps had what it was like, and we were there. I helped volunteer a little bit when it was built in 1994. I remember how grand it was when it first opened. And just seeing all the kids who are, the kids of people at this concert play on that space that night, I realized it's been there for a long time. And a lot of those materials, as we'll discuss later, they're starting to get pretty worn down. But anyway, Emery and I just kind of gave each other this look where we thought, well, I wonder if anyone's doing anything about this. And then the next thing we knew, we saw out of the corner of our eye the mayor. We're like, well, we should ask him. We kind of gave each other this I dare you to go ask him. Look. So we went over and we asked him. And it turns out, it was one of those things that people knew about, but no one had, dove into. So we decided, okay, we can do this. Let's dive into it. And I say all of this about how little we knew, and still know to a certain extent, because I really quickly got introduced to some wonderful people, one of them being Miss Laura. And immediately I felt like with the Kiwanis, I had just met a group of friends. This is a photo from homecoming. In the picture, you can see that's me standing with some volunteers from the Key Club. There's our banner there. And then in the background, you can see Russ's big, awesome Toyota Tundra truck. And behind, you can actually sort of see Russ, and I believe Dorothy is back there too, getting ready to throw pancakes at all the passersby at the homecoming parade. And now, how did this happen? This happened because from the very first time I met Carol, she said, oh, you need to talk to Russ. And then I talked to Russ, and the very first time I spoke to Russ is like, well, we're doing homecoming. And I was like, great, we're supposed to do homecoming too? I don't know what. I mean, really, our float, if you will, or whatever we were at the homecoming was like me pushing a baby stroller next to my friend Emery, who's pushing a double baby jogger because he has twins. And I was like, man, that's not going to be really impressive. As soon as I call Russ, next thing I know, we've got a float, we've got a truck that we can put all of our candy on for throwing. We had a banner, we had Key Club volunteers. It was amazing. So that was just great. And I just knew that from that point on that this was a group that cared and was willing to help people. And I looked more and more into your mission and what you do. And I just thought, gosh, to improve a child's life and a community, to improve a child's life, one child in one community at a time, I just thought, gosh, that's a great mission. And I wanted to bring this up too. Many of you know him. This is Chuck. Chuck is the father of the best man at my wedding. Tim and I have been friends for a really long time, and Chuck has been in my life for 25 years. And as I think everyone in this room knows, Chuck was a proud Kiwanian and an active Kiwanian. And what struck me about the days during his celebration of life and afterwards was how the Kiwanians were there. I remember seeing several Kiwanians at his celebration of life. And then afterwards, Tim, Kate, Claire, Grant, Blake, we went back to Chuck's old house and we sat down to a big loaded kitchen full of food that was all provided by Del Novotny and Novotny Catering. So I just wanted to say thank you for all that you do for the community. I think that Kiwanians, when I think of the Kiwanians, there's this lyric from a Billy Joel song that comes to mind for me, and it's, "We never knew what friends we had." I feel like that's what this community is like. We don't even realize what friends we have, the things that the Kiwanians are doing and continue to do quietly, humbly, without asking for attention. It meant a lot to me, and so that's why after learning more about this, I contacted Russ and asked to join this organization as of this year. And I just wanted to say that thank you for all of that. I already mentioned your mission. I know that there's a possibility that this will be put on ALCTV, and I would just like to say again that for anyone who's watching, this is a group that has a worthy mission that's dedicated to improving the world one child and one community at a time. I cannot think of a better mission to pursue. So thank you for all that you do and have done over the years. Now I'd like to turn our attention to Alps. The Avon Lake Play Space has been a gift to our community for more than 26 years. This news clipping is from when it first opened back in April of 1994. Our community, as you know, loves this park. But not everyone at the community may realize how Kiwanians make this park great. This is the entryway to Alps. And over the past several months, as we've been leading this effort, we've received more than 250 surveys from people in the community telling us what they loved about the old structure, what they might like to keep, or what they would like to see in a new structure. And one thing that comes up over and over again is people love the feeling that when you walk up to Alps. You feel like you're entering a castle, this big grand castle through this entryway. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you may know this, but that castle was brought to you by Avon Lake Kiwanis. And there's been so many other parks, playgrounds, and other amazing things throughout our community brought to you by Kiwanians. This right here is a picture of Lakewood Park in Lakewood. It is the park that comes up the most often amongst surveys when people are asked, like, what parks do you really admire? What would you like a new Alps to be like? And if you look in the corner, you'll see a giant, beautiful pavilion brought to you by Lakewood Kiwanis. If you take a trip down to Worcester, Ohio, you'll arrive at the Kiwanis Christmas Park. This park was recently renovated by OHM Advisors, who's also the architects who are currently undertaking a study of Alps. And OHM has community members who live in Avon Lake, so they're familiar with the land more than anyone else would be. Anyway, that's the ongoing architect going forward. For now, I wanted to speak with you a little bit about how we got here. This is from an inspector's assessment that was done in early 2019, and basically they said that it's apparent that the playground is a well-used attraction in the area. How well used? We're talking more than 2 million kids easily have went through this playground and played on its space over the past 25 years. There's hundreds more kids that are still there every day. In fact, if we go back to that photo of the Avon Lake Kiwanis at the castle, like that thing, I took that this morning in the snow, and sure enough, like 5 feet away, there was a kid and a dad who had just come off of the sledding hill behind it, and they're playing on the equipment. So even in the snow, that park gets used. It's in the center of our city here in Avon Lake, and it's accessible to all, and that like people from any community, it's not like a neighborhood park. It is the park for all of Avon Lake. In terms of its condition, the materials it was made out of are all natural wood, and they were designed to last about 20 years. Today, we're on 26 years and counting. This was more to assuage the community, and I'll say it again, the park is not unsafe. Your kids can play on it, right? There's nothing that's gonna fail, but it is becoming dry, splintered, the frame's no longer level. And that inspection found that on 44 of 49 inspection points, their recommendation was replace or rebuild. If we were to update this Alps as it stands today with those existing materials, you would spend, they said 160 to 180,000. That's probably a rosy estimate, and that might get you 5 to 10 more years of use out of the structure. Even if you were to spend that much money, you'd have a park that was not ADA compliant, and we'd be in the situation which we're currently in right now, where if you have a child who is in a wheelchair, there's not really a city park that's like an accessible play space for you. So the inspector's assessment was that planning for replacement is recommended, and that was the conclusion we came to as well. And that's why I'm here to say that it is time to renew Alps. I'm here tonight to ask for your input and for your help. What do you want to see in a new Alps? I mentioned earlier that we're having an ongoing survey. That survey is still available. And also I'll be speaking in a bit about upcoming ward meetings where the architect will be unveiling some first initial mock-ups for community input. So you can have a say in what you like, what you don't like, what you'd like to see. I'm here to ask for what support you can offer, and I'm here to ask how we can work together to create a great space for our community. We can talk a bit about how it might look, and I can share with you 3 values of the group of volunteers that we've brought together, and also of the community at large, because we've heard over and over again that there's 3 things that people are really excited about when they talk about this park. 1, accessibility. I mentioned previously about children who are in a wheelchair, children who have some sort of mobility issue. This park should be accessible to all, a future park. Pretty much everyone agrees on that. 2, inclusive to children of all abilities and conditions. So that means children who are on the autism spectrum and anything else. We want to make a play space that is available and safe for them and has sensory appropriate equipment. And then lastly, and multi-generational parks may sound new, but they're something that has been on the rise around the world for a long time. In fact, the city of Barcelona has more than 300 more than 300 multi-generational parks just within its own limits. And a multi-generational park means that there's equipment for young and old. It's not just for kids, right? In here, you've kind of got this sort of CrossFit-y looking structure with people playing on, but it also means adults and senior fitness. This is a picture is taken from Glenrose Hospital Park in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. The point is there is equipment, there are options for fun and for play and for strengthening available for all ages at a multi-generational park. And studies that have been done on these parks have found that they bring several benefits with them, both to the individual and to the community. On the individual level, a study done by a university in Finland found that it was a group of, I believe, like 50 seniors who exercised at a multi-generational park 3 times a week over the span of 6 weeks, scored better on tests of vitality after that 6 weeks. Similarly, a multi-generational park brings together young, old, in one spot, so you have a stronger sense of community. People feel more connected together. I believe that together we can make Alps a place that is truly for all. So what's next? Right now, as I mentioned, there's an architect's assessment ongoing. There'll be public input at a ward meeting next week on Wednesday. Anyone in Avon Lake is welcome to attend. And at that event, there'll be some mock-ups of potential layouts. We're talking very basic beginning bubble graphs, but it's the start. This is when people start to shape how this is going to look. We're also sending out input sheets to schools. The first effort got kids from, all of the elementary schools and middle schools plus St. Joseph to, basically draw as an art project their ideas for a park, what they'd like to see in a park. OHM is familiar with this process. They did it when they did the Kiwanis Christmas Run Park down in Worcester, and we'll be doing it as well. And as I mentioned previously, our online survey is still available at bit.ly/Renew Alps, with Renew all lowercase and ALPS all capital. So I wanted to, end with some ways that you could help. One would just be advice. As I mentioned, this is my first time ever doing community organizing. There's probably a lot of things I could be doing differently or better. Input, as I mentioned, the survey online or coming down to the ward meeting next week. Volunteers. We have had people reach out and say, yeah, I'm right there, we're gonna help. And then a lot of them don't actually show. Sort of one of these lessons of community organizing that I'm learning. But a lot of people do. Long story short, in the year ahead, we've got some events planned. We've got a lot going on, and we'll definitely be in need of volunteers. Fundraising events. We'll be hosting a few, but we could always use more. There will be a lot of resources required for this park. Connections. If you know of a business that might be willing to donate something for a future silent auction or food for an event, that would be huge for us. And then lastly, of course, donations in whatever form. So this is our contact information. It's letsrenewalps@gmail.com. Our Facebook, we have a Renew Alps there as well, and we also have the website, letsrenewalps.com. Feel free to visit any of those, or I'll be happy to provide more info to you about them. This is going to be a lot of work, this effort that we're undertaking, but our community is worth it, and I hope that you'll agree. Thank you again. I'll now turn over to questions. Yes, sir.
What's the attitude of the city about this, city being the council and the mayor?
City council and the mayor are all very enthusiastic about the project. I think I have not met a person in the entire city who does not get it, right? When we talk about Alps, the first thing they go is like, yeah, that needs to get done.
Did they then, because of that interest, put it right in the budget?
So what I understand is this.
The reason I'm asking that is that it would seem to me that play space has been here since 1996?
94, yes, sir.
1994, and I've been here that whole time,
Yes.
even before that, but, that's part of the city recently.
Correct.
And if it's falling apart, the city should be maintaining the damn thing, and if they need an encouragement to maintain it, I don't know why.
Well, the city has been maintaining it for the past 26 years, and on a number of occasions they have done some pretty significant renovations on it. In fact, if you look back at those historical photos, the original build was like a wood shade. Now it's this maroon and blue, because that was the result of a pretty significant
Are they willing
painting.
to expand it then? Because it seems like that's what we're talking about, right?
We're talking about an expansion and probably a significant replacement.
And they're involved in the discussions on that?
Yes, they're involved with the discussions, and they recognize that they have a significant role to play in supporting the event, or excuse me, the undertaking. Yes, sir.
Who's retained the architect?
The city has. Correct. That's the first investment, is the study that's ongoing with the architect. Sorry?
I said I'm happy to hear that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Does expansion mean a larger lot size?
It could mean a larger footprint. I mean, a larger lot, I believe.
Or is it possible?
Well, so in terms of the lot, you have, eventually you hit Lake Road, and then to the left there's a private property. But some of the lot size is going to be dependent on some determinations with the water department. They may need to put in some tanks at that space.
They do?
What's that?
They're talking about putting a tank in that ground?
Potentially. underneath it.
Okay. That was my idea a long time ago, but I thought they threw that.
No, I think they held on to that for a long time. You're more influential than you think.
How
Yes,
did
sir.
you come up with 108,000? And why can't you just go down to the playground world and?
Well, I didn't come up with $180,000. That was the determination of Robert Leathers, which is the original build of this. They came to town and assessed the whole thing, and those are the figures that they came up with.
That was the architect.
The architect who originally built this. $180,000 is significantly more than well, actually not, than the original build cost.
But you can't go down to the playground world and just get some off-the-shelf stuff?
So having Playground World put in this stuff would be kind of similar to having your Tundra act as a dump truck. It'll work for a while, but it's going to get beat up a whole lot faster, right? And then it's going to wear down quicker, because we're talking about equipment that's designed for like 2 or 3 kids playing a couple times a week in the privacy of their backyard versus equipment that's designed for hundreds of kids pounding on it every single day.
I just drive by playground.
I like Playground World too.
I drive by it, that's why I asked.
Fair enough.
This sounds like it's a bigger operation than a community build. You know, a big part of Alps was everybody in the
Community build.
community, from little kids soaping screws to
Right.
to contractors donating their time to help cut
Yes.
trusses for the roofs or whatever.
Yes.
This endeavor you're talking about now sounds more like it's a commercial install as opposed to any community build.
I believe that will be the result. Now, we're looking at creative ways to get the community involved and to save money. That being said, I think times have changed on a couple of levels. First of all, back then it was made of wood, right? And, you know, Mr. Dixon's shop class had us all cutting wood. You know, that was something that high school kids could do. Today's structures, you're talking about steel and molded plastic, right? So more durable, more complicated. Also, much of it will come with a warranty, which would get voided if it's not installed by professionals. So that's one thing. The other thing is that I mean, this is sort of a gut feeling, but it's one informed by a lot of observation and conversations with, you know, a fair amount of people. I think that people today they have just very little time. There were some people in 1994 who spent their entire week up there building in the rain, right? You were one, yeah. I don't know if I could do that nowadays, right? I think it'd be really hard to find a lot of people who can do that. Carol?
We had a guest here that just happened into a meeting. She was, I think, from Detroit.
Yes.
And visiting friends here.
Yes.
And it just happened. I had just been meeting him and hearing him at another meeting. And I was talking about it to our group, and she told me that she had just received a very sizable grant from Kiwanis International to help Kiwanis do a portion of a park that they were doing, very similar to what Brian is talking about. I'm not very good with remembering numbers. I think it was 180,000 that was given by Kiwanis International, because it is going to be handicapped accessible. She wanted to use musical instruments that could be played by all those kids for all those years, and there are companies out there that are producing them for public parks and are totally non-destructible in weather and children. So that's just, you know, one thing that could be done.
And if you, what you were just saying, I was just thinking that if you would focus in on one part, like the handicap accessible, and ask Kiwanis for the
stuff.
for the grant for that, you know, I think that would be a plus right there. That would be something that could happen.
Okay. That's great to know. Thank you. Yes, Chuck?
How far along have the discussions about financing
With this-
emerged? How have they unfolded?
So-
Or is it waiting until we've got a concept or a plan and then a cost attached to it, and then look at the financing?
There's a little bit of that, yes. So one of the things that's going to be coming out of this architect's assessment and the preliminary designs is a few options, right? People will see, this is what this range looks like, and this is what this range looks like. And they can endorse whichever one they prefer. And based on that, we'll have a lot more direction as to what the cost will be. And from there, like I said, I know that the city recognizes it has a responsibility. Mayor Zilka is here this evening. Thank you for attending. You know, we as a community effort are working hard to spread the word, to make outreaches to businesses, to individual donors, to get leads on grants from both corporate and from government, to try and just bring as many resources as we can to bear to make this park the best it can possibly be. Yes, ma'am.
Has
Kendra.
the city decided how much they're gonna want from your group and how much they're gonna supply?
Like I said,
Depending on what the budget is?
there's been no specific figure like, you're going to get this, we're going to get that. If that's
But I
what you're
mean, if
looking
it
for.
goes more like $200,000 to $250,000, which is probably what it's gonna do, are they gonna say, well, you be responsible for half of that, and the city will be responsible for the other half? Because they're gonna have to maintain it?
Great questions. I can't conclusively answer that. I'm not trying to dodge it. I can just tell you that the city recognizes that it has like responsibility here, and it has, you know, been enthusiastic in wanting to work with us.
Because that would depend on how much you're gonna get from organizations to help fund your end of it, where the city will probably just throw a tax on everybody.
I don't think that's the plan.
I know that's not the plan, but, because they can't take it out of the school budget.
Why not?
Well, that's what you and I would say, why
Well,
not?
it's owned by the city.
The land is owned by the city.
Yeah, so it would be the play space is owned by the city.
Yeah, but
Correct.
you're gonna have.
Nobody has a deed to the play space.
But it's not
except the
gonna,
city.
it's not gonna cost, this is the same thing with the school levies. I want this amount of money because we need it to build a new school. But they don't include what it's gonna cost to maintain that building. So they have to include in this part what it's gonna
No,
cost
they-
to
they know.
maintain.
They know. They know what it's gonna cost to maintain buildings. They're expert at that. They do it all
Then
every
why
year.
do they keep coming back to you every 3 years for more money to maintain a building?
Well, costs go up.
But if it's maintained right, you shouldn't have to do that.
If you're concerned about the long term, which is a very good concern, it is part of the planning. I think that everyone involved with this effort is not just thinking about putting up a structure and then, hey, we've got a structure. Everyone recognizes that this is a significant investment in the community, and it's an investment that will need to be well cared for years and generations to come. Dave.
You know, I understand what you say. The size of this group back in 1993 was 5 times what's here tonight. Service has kind of disappeared with the next generations. There's not a real call to service for kids or younger generations. They just are too busy doing other things. But again, my first question is, how long will this new designed equipment last compared to what we had there before? You know, we got 20 years out of that. That's pretty good, to be honest with you. But is this longevity of this new design type metal and plastic? Is it longer I mean, has it got UV protection? Is it designed to last longer than 20 years?
Yes.
What do they say?
Yes, I mean, equipment durability is a premier concern, and everything here that you're talking about has a lifespan that's measured in decades, not years.
But then there's also, you know, I still think that was one of the best events that ever happened in this city, was the building of Alps.
I would
to be
agree.
really honest with you.
That's why
I
I'm
mean,
here.
it brought the community together. It was an incredible, you know, I took vacation days I got so excited about it.
Yes.
And then
Thank you.
Michael came after me and I ended up in Kiwanis, him and Hurley. And I got my arm bent behind my back and said, "You're in Kiwanis." So,
You're excited.
yeah, but I just think that there's something to be said. If you built that again out of wood and you got 20 more years out of it, there'll be another generation that can worry about it, but it is a great community event, putting it together like we did in the 5 days that were there. So, like I say, there's some value to that, to bring the community together. I don't know, what do you think? I agree. You know, I mean, like I say, we can hire a contractor to do anything, and then everybody drives by and say, "Boy, that looks great." But it sure is nice we had little kids soaping screws. I mean, goodness, there's a lot to be said for that. And if you did it again and got another 20 years, is that so bad? And it may be at a cheaper cost.
Well, so,
Like I say, if you want to plan for 100 years, it's going to cost you more.
Right.
If you plan for 20 years, it's going to cost you less. But you may be able to add some other intrinsic value to the whole thing by bringing the community together.
So there's a whole lot you brought up there, and I want to repeat back some of it to make sure I understood it, and also to respond to some of it, or as much of it as I can. So, yes, the first Alps build was an amazing experience for the whole community. It brought the community together. As I said when we first launched this effort, you know, it left an indelible mark on me, seeing people work on it back in 1994. I was a freshman in high school. Dave DeLugas had brought us out there, and I remember seeing people working on this thing, and I just thought that was the coolest thing. People from all across the community coming together to build something, one common goal. I love that. I still love that. We would absolutely love to have the community involved with this. One of the concerns with wooden materials is visibility. So if you go into Alps with young kids and you turn and your kids run in a certain direction, you can't see them, right? Because those wooden slats, which are like 2 inches wide, it basically blocks all visibility. And so in the survey that we've had up since September, we've discovered that around about like 40%, somewhere between 40% and half, and I'm sorry that that number isn't top of mind, of the city does not take their children to Alps. And then the number one reason cited is because they do not feel safe there. Why don't they feel safe? The number one cited reason there is visibility.
Point well taken. Makes sense.
So if compare that to Lakewood Park, which you mentioned earlier, which again, Kiwanis built that big, beautiful pavilion next to it. There's been times where I've taken both my daughters there, and one's running probably 50 or 60 yards this way, or 50 or 60 feet this way on top of this like giant spider climbing thing, or she's climbing up the spider climbing thing. The other one is playing on some of the more gymnastic looking equipment over here with parallel bars and things like that. And I can just kind of stand in the middle, and I have an eye on both of them, and I can see everywhere where they go, right? And I've been able to watch them for like 2 or 3 hours at a time and not lose track of them. Whereas in Alps, almost inevitably there's some moment where like you feel your heart sink through to the bottom of bottom of your chest, because you turn and you're like, I have no idea where my children are. Carol.
I do think that you have a point, though, that is really important, and that is getting the community involved and as you're doing the planning, constantly thinking, and how could we involve the community? How could we involve the kids? How could we involve the parents? And still be using materials that are lasting, that are contemporary.
Yes.
And that will last longer. I think that can be done.
I would agree.
Yeah, it's easy
But
to
it
pull out
is
a
important to
paycheck.
keep that
It's easy to-
always in
To
mind.
pull out $100 and get donations from people, I think. You can get donations because they don't have to do anything. But there's something about sweat equity that is endearing to people and make them think more about their community a little bit and.
Absolutely.
And all, so that's all. That's my 2 cents worth, that I think that the build is worth something. And
I would
still, you know, like Ms. Laura says, that it needs to be considered as much as possible with community involvement. I mean, I think that's huge.
I'm totally in agreement with you on that. And again, we are looking for every way that we can involve the community that will make sense and be in accordance with warranties and with the materials and everything else. We'll have a better sense of that as the design becomes more solidified.
And of course, the other thing I think is paramount is that we use, if we have to hire contractors, you try to keep the business in town. You know, there's a lot of capable companies out here that may help actually finance some of this as well as help do some of the work. But I would really like to see keep as much business local as possible.
Is it any consolation to you that this was printed by Tom Brock at Avon Lake Printing?
Yeah, that is. No, that is. But you understand what I'm saying. I mean,
Absolutely.
I mean, there's builders that have made a nice living in our town. There's contractors that have made a lot of money off of those builders as well. But they should be considered to help us put this thing together, I would think, or help the community put it together. And if there's some money to be made, profit is not a bad word. That really isn't. You know, these are people that don't do that stuff as a hobby. They do it for a livelihood.
Correct.
And nobody deprives them of a livelihood and having to pay workers' comp and everything else to their employees. That's not bad, but it's also nice to keep the money in town if at all possible.
I'm in complete agreement with you on that. Are there any other questions?
Let's give him a nice round of applause.
Thank you.
The preceding program was presented to you by a community producer. The statements, views, and opinions expressed were not necessarily those of ALCTV or the City of Avon Lake.